You grew up believing marriage was the destination, the reward, the mark of a complete man. You were told that one day you'd find her, the one, and she'd complete you. The movies showed it. Your parents expected it. Society reinforced it. But no one warned you what would happen after the ceremony, after the smiles, after the photos. No one told you how many men sit in silence years later, quietly broken, privately suffocating, wondering how they lost themselves. Schopenhauer did. He saw it long before you did, okay? That behind the romance, behind the dream, okay, hides a cold reality. Most men regret marriage, not because of her, but because of what they lose inside themselves. He called it the illusion of love, a biological trap designed by nature, not for happiness, but for reproduction. He said, love is not romantic, it's strategic. The moment desire fades, reality crashes in. And the man who once stood tall now bends, under obligation, under compromise, under the weight of a structure he thought would give him peace. But it doesn't, because for many men, marriage isn't the beginning of a new life. It is the quiet end of their old one. The freedom to think, to move, to build without permission. Gone. The edge that made him dangerous, dulled. The hunger that made him ambitious, sedated. And slowly, a new man is born, not out of growth, but out of resignation. 8. He tells himself, this is maturity. He says, this is just how life works. But deep down, something aches. Something whispers, this isn't what I wanted. And Schopenhauer, in his cold brilliance, said it plainly. Marriage is a debt we pay for a moment of pleasure. Harsh, maybe, but look around. Look at the men who gave everything, only to find themselves depleted. Look at the men who no longer speak with passion, who no longer wake with fire, who live not for themselves, but for survival, not in battle, but in silence. Because marriage didn't give them purpose, it replaced it, and no one talks about that. No one tells boys that the system they were walking into was not designed for their freedom, but for their containment. That their desires will be framed as selfish. That their leadership will be labeled toxic. That their longing for solitude, adventure, and greatness will be quietly traded for compliance, predictability, and emotional labor. And then they wonder why men stop caring, why they check out, why they go numb. It's not because they hate their wives, it's because they lost themselves trying to be enough for someone else. They became useful, but not alive. And that is a tragedy Schopenhauer saw centuries ago. Schopenhauer didn't hate women. He didn't hate marriage. He hated illusions. He hated the way men were seduced into sacrificing their spirit for promises that rarely came true. He watched as men gave up their solitude, their rhythm, their wildness, not because they were weak, but because they were lied to. Lied to about what love is. Lied to about what marriage gives. Lied to about what they're supposed to want. And over time, those lies turn into lives. Lives that look stable on the outside, but inside, dry, still, silent. That's the pain no one prepares you for. The pain of watching your soul go quiet in a life that's supposed to feel fulfilling. You think you're being no-ball, choosing your happiness over your freedom. It's choosing peace over truth. Choosing compromise over your instincts. And for a while, it works. Until one day, you wake up and can't recognize yourself. You've become agreeable, accommodating, safe. You've forgotten how to be dangerous. Forgotten how to speak with sharpness. Forgotten how to chase something with your whole body. Not because someone gave you permission, but because you decided it mattered. And that's what Schopenhauer meant when he said love enslaves the man more than it binds the woman. Because when men love deeply, we give completely. We give time, money, protection, energy, future. Canned, slowly, invisibly, we build a prison and decorate it with good intentions. We say it's for the kids, for the house, for peace. But truthfully, it's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being judged. Fear of becoming that man, the one who walked away. But that man might be the only one who's free. Schopenhauer said that the happiest men are often those who resist the call to marry. Not because they're selfish, but because they understand the cost. Because they know that once you step into a structure built by someone else's expectations, you have two options: bend or break. Most men bend slowly, consistently, until they can't even feel it anymore. They laugh when they're supposed to. They show up on schedule. They play the part. But deep inside, a scream gets quieter every year. That scream is your real self. The one that remembers how to take risks. The one that once had a fire. The longer you ignore him, the harder it becomes to bring him back. That's why some men reach 40 and suddenly snap. They leave, they spiral, or they shut down completely, not because they're immature, but because they realize they've been living someone else's dream. And that realization doesn't always lead to freedom. Sometimes it leads to collapse. Schopenhauer's warning wasn't about bitterness. It was about clarity, about seeing that love, when it becomes obligation, rots. That sacrifice, when it's not mutual, becomes slavery. And that most men regret marriage, not because they didn't love, but because they didn't love themselves enough to ask, is this really my path? Or just the one I was told to follow? So how do you come back? How does a man return to himself after years of playing a role? After years of shrinking just enough to keep things smooth, just enough to not cause tension, just enough to not lose what he built? The truth is, most men don't. Most men cope. They bury it. They find small escapes. They become numb experts in surviving the life they chose. Cool. But if you're here, listening, it means some part of you is still awake. Some part of you still believes you're allowed to want more. Not more money, not more sex, more of yourself. And reclaiming that doesn't start with divorce. It starts with honesty. Brutal, uncomfortable honesty. Ask yourself, who have I become? And did I choose him? Or did I settle into him because that's what she needed? What culture wanted? What everyone expected? Because if you didn't choose this version of you, it's not real. It's a mask. And every day you wear it, you move further from who you were born to be. That's what Schopenhauer wanted men to see. That love without sovereignty is a beautiful cage. That marriage without soul alignment is spiritual erosion. That giving a fire to someone who doesn't know what to do with it doesn't make you noble. It makes you invisible. And the world is full of invisible men. Men who used to be wild. Men who used to be creators, warriors, leaders, thinkers. Now quietly pleasing, performing, pacifying. All in the name of being good. But good doesn't mean alive. Good doesn't mean fulfilled. And if your goodness costs you your essence, it's not goodness, it's submission. So how do you come back? You stop lying to her, to your family, to yourself. You say what you've never said out loud. I miss me. You remember the man you were when you didn't have to explain yourself. When you didn't ask permission to dream big, to take risks, to say no. You start carving time for solitude. You start moving your body again. You start thinking dangerous thoughts, the kind that make you question everything you built. And no, this doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities. It means rebuilding your relationship with yourself inside them. You stop expecting your marriage to fulfill you. You stop expecting your partner to inspire you. And you realize you were never supposed to lose your soul to keep the peace. You were supposed to bring your soul into the relationship and let it sharpen you both. But if that's no longer possible, if the structure can't hold the weight of your truth, then yes, walking away may hurt, but staying might be what kills you. Not physically, spiritually, and Schopenhauer knew. Death of the soul is far more tragic than any heartbreak. Freedom doesn't mean loneliness. Fire doesn't mean chaos. Solitude doesn't mean failure. Okay. These are the lies you were taught to keep you compliant, to keep you soft, okay, to keep you plugged into a system that rewards obedience but punishes sovereignty. But Schopenhauer's warning wasn't just a critique of marriage. It was a call to wake up, to remember that fulfillment doesn't come from contracts, ceremonies, or shared mortgages. It comes from alignment with your values, with your fire, with your own rhythm. And the truth is, you can be in alignment if you never stop long enough to ask what you really want. It's why silence is terrifying to most men. Because when you get quiet, the lies get louder. And you start to hear just how far you've drifted from yourself. But that silence, that pain, it's not weakness, it's signal. It's your invitation to come back to yourself. And for the first time, not because someone told you who you should be, but because you chose it on your own terms, with your own words, with your own vision. And maybe that vision includes a partner. Maybe it includes a wife. Maybe even a family. But now you lead from truth, not from tradition, from soul, not survival. And if you look around and realize the life you built is no longer capable of holding that truth, then yes, you may need to burn it down. And that's terrifying. But it's also freedom. Because on the other side of that fire is not destruction, it's resurrection. Of the man who doesn't smile to keep the peace, who doesn't shrink to stay loved, who doesn't sacrifice his soul for the illusion of security. That man doesn't ask what's allowed. He asks what's true, and when he finds it, he builds from it, slowly, clearly, powerfully. That's what this world is missing. Not more husbands, not more marriages, but more men who remember themselves. Men who don't regret what they gave away, because now they take it back, not to hurt others, but to be whole again. That's not bitterness, it's becoming. And Schopenhauer saw it before we did. The question is, do you see it now?